Good morning, Your Royal Highness, dear delegates. Nice to be with you. Thank you all for the wonderful start to this lovely opening ceremony in this beautiful hall in this beautiful city in this wonderful country. My job now is what I do at all of our conferences for those of you who've been with us. I spend this time now introducing GSTC to those of you who don't know it and giving updates on our activities to those of you who do know us. So that's what I'm going to do for the next minutes. So let's dive right into that. What is our mission, our activities, our future plans? Let's walk through that. I'm going to use this timeline to kind of help structure the discussion. It was in the year 2007 when Mr. Cabrini was with UNWTO. He was the head of sustainability there, and he worked with people at UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program. They'd been working together for a couple of years to define sustainability in travel and tourism based on the Millennium Development Goals, the predecessors to the current UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And they had defined sustainability and done a number of issues on policy, and they wanted a larger definition of sustainable tourism. So they created us as a nonprofit organization outside the UN, but guided by them. So we have the logo of UN Foundation in Washington, D.C., paid the bills for 5 years, gave us a secretariat, registered us there as a nonprofit. So we're outside the UN, but we are guided very much by those two UN agencies. Our first output was in 2008, and we produced the first criteria. It was called the GSTC criteria for hotels and tour operators, because they said foundationally accommodations and land transport and tour operating packages are foundational aspects of the many subsectors of the complex world that is in travel and tourism. So that was our first order of business. And then later, some years later, in 2013, we released the destination criteria. So our work with the industry started with accommodations and tour operators, and that's still today really a very large focus of our activity. But there were many of us working in the sustainable tourism community that realized there needed to be guidance for destination management and for public policy. And so the destination criteria, our second output, a set of standards, the destination criteria serves those two purposes of guidance on public policy at the national level or provincial or municipal, and then guidance at the local municipal level at a particular destination on how best to manage a destination. And I'll come back to the timeline a little bit later. But to focus on the criteria, we sometimes get to be known more about certification and things, but I'd really ask you to think about us primarily, first and foremost, as the keepers of global standards. That's really our primary role. And the reason that the GSTC criteria today are so well adopted, so well accepted throughout the world as the global standard is for these reasons. First of all, it was based on the UN work, the Millennium Development Goals. Secondly, when we create and formally revise the criteria, we go through an incredibly inclusive process. We follow the standard setting code of an organization called the ISEAL Alliance, which provides guidance to sustainable entities in all sectors. And we spend a full year to create, sometimes more, and nearly a year to revise, a very formal process. We put out a massive call. We have a massive list of email addresses to trade associations and entities all over the world. And so we put out a call to the public sector, private sector, academia, NGOs, anybody, everybody, and everyone. And we have on our website, you could go anytime on our website and look at the criteria section and make a comment at any time on the criteria which we formally gather. And then during that year-long process of creation or revision, we have public consultations, we have on-site sessions to engage. Here at this conference, we'll have a couple of workshops where you can roll up your sleeves and be involved. So it's a global effort. So the end result, the product is, the GSTC criteria belong to each of you just as much as it belongs to any of us inside the organization, because we're the managers of a process. Because of that inclusive process, it comes from everywhere in the world, developing world, developed world, north, south, east, west. We're not political. It's truly an inclusive process. So that's our primary duty, is to do that. Even if the end result were to be only 2% off from what 2 or 3 people might do in one room, the very fact that it went through that inclusive process gives it the credibility. And hence, we make that claim, and it's widely recognized as such. And literally, the GSTC criteria are utilized all over the world. We have some, I think it's now 108 countries as members. We interact, I think we have 39 national government members, but even where we don't, we've got provinces and municipalities or industry, truly far-reaching. And you'll see some examples of how global we are here during the course of this presentation. But if you look at this slide, this is very foundational to who we are. So when we create and revise the criteria, we'll never deviate from this basic structure that defines sustainability to include not just environmental issues, but social issues, for economic sustainability for businesses, for job growth, and community development, and respecting community, and culture. So sections A, B, C, D are foundational at each of the sets of criteria that we've created and will create. This will not deviate from that essential concept of defining sustainability to include issues of management and governance, social issues, community impacts, cultural issues, and of course the environment. And I call your attention to the language in sections B, C, and D. Maximize economic benefits and minimize the negative impacts. And the same language is used in B, C, and D. It's all about maximize benefits, minimize negative impacts. Do more good, do less harm. That's really what we need to do all the time, is work on that duality of keep the good, all the economic development, make it better, make it grow, but manage the negative impacts that come with it. That's foundational. So we now have 600 plus members. I got the number right, 108 countries. And here you can see the map, and you can see we're truly global as an organization indeed. Our board of directors, many of them are with us. We have a combination of elected and appointed board of directors. And look at the geographic and therefore ethnic spread. And some of them are with us. Do I dare do this? If I could ask you now, I didn't coach you, to stand, our board of directors. We have a few of you clustered here. Please, just stand. Don't be shy. Thank you. I'm sorry I didn't warn them. And we'll have a board meeting after the conference while we gather in person. But again, you can see tremendous variety. And this is who they are. The top row here is our executive committee that meets frequently online around the world. Natalie Kidd on top from Intrepid Travel is the only one of our executive committee not here. Luigi, of course, the chair. Kelly Bricker and Ram Kumar, our vice chairs. Coco Tong from China is on the executive committee. And the second row, everybody in this whole page except Natalie is here with us at this conference. And then the top row of page 2 is mostly here. And that's our full board. You can see tremendous ethnicity, geographic dispersion, but we do have one gender problem. We've long had a gender imbalance. We just consistently have more women than men. And one part of our identity is that in 2021, we became members of the ISEAL community. And the reason I mention that is that it was very difficult to attain that level. We had to spend years of development and then proof of that we follow the codes of the good principles of this organization called the ISEAL Alliance, which you'll recognize some labels from the supermarket and the household products. FSC, Equal Label on paper and wood, fortunately, has become extremely prominent around the world and several others. So we're in that club. We do knowledge sharing with them and so forth. And it took a lot of work to get into that club. And that's where we are. So look at yourselves. As Luigi said, it's more than 50. I got the last update just a couple of hours ago. 57 countries you represent. The more than 500 of you. As you can see in the map, really a tremendous distribution of attendees here. And a little bit more on the attendees. A bit more than a third are in the public sector because we see, I'm sorry, the font is small. The blue, DMO, Destination Management Organizations at the destination level. That's 25% of you. And then NTO, National Tourism Organizations, that's 14% of you. And then yellow is NGOs. There's one more government, a little one off to the left, 2.5% called government agency. So 25 and 14, 39, so about 40-some percent of you are in the public sector for sure. And then the industry is very fragmented into accommodations and OTAs and tour operators and several others. That's basically who we are in the room. When we work at the public sector, we typically work along the lines of the three areas indicated on this slide. At the national level or provincial level, we usually as a starting point talk about policy. We're not a consulting firm, we're not an advisory service. We limit our guidance to use our knowledge that we've gathered from working around the world with the GSTC criteria and other local and regional standards, because we have programs, formal programs to harmonize a local or regional standard with the GSTC criteria, so we don't kind of force it through that it has to be purely the GSTC criteria. We have a formal program to have harmonization of other standards that we call GSTC recognized standards that go through a formal process. And we give examples to those policymakers at those levels on what's working in other places, what methodologies have been tried, and so forth. We feel that that's a value that we can add to their policy planning, and that's really it. So we're not consultants that come back and guide, but that's again, that's work that I think we're uniquely qualified for, and we do on a regular basis. But then also, lower left, destination management. Because the destination criteria were so inclusively created and they include key elements of management and governance, they're used widely as guidance on how to manage better. And we've been blessed with, from the earliest years, have people that are very much, it's a really sort of a who's who of expertise in destination management that serve on our Destination Stewardship Working Group that have been engaged with us. And so we've really, had a tremendous amount of expertise there. And we issue a 3-time-a-year report to our destination members, and we have knowledge sharing and webinars and all sorts of content for the members. But we also work with the government to encourage and push industry to improvement. So on the one hand, there's the policy and how to manage for destinations for what the public sector should do, right? But then part of that, what we think they should do is provide guidance, encouragement, perhaps requirements. We're not promoting regulation or requirements, but if that's what works, fine. So we work with them on that sort of thing. So this sort of covers the spread of activities that we do with the public sector most typically. So this chart shows, on the left you see various subsectors of travel and tourism. I think that column on the left is a good reminder of the complexity of travel and tourism. Travel and tourism pre-COVID was 10.4% of global GDP. It touches a lot of things. And I've been in travel and tourism for more than 40 years, and I've worked in trade associations in Europe and North America and Pacific Asia, interacted tremendously in industry on committees and boards of these trade associations, worked as a tour operator for 25 years, contracting with suppliers on all 7 continents. And what I've learned through all that is that I don't think we're one sector. I think we're a collection of sectors. Aviation and accommodations don't really talk to each other very often, and there's really a lot of pieces to it. It's extremely complex. Most of the subsectors of the industry have incredibly rich supply chains. They touch residents' life in big ways. It is complex, and it's intrusive. And so I think a first point of understanding how to be more sustainable is to embrace and recognize the sheer complexity of it. Because if you think you have easy solutions, then I don't think you know travel and tourism. The challenges are great. In some ways, we have to break it down into pieces and work on them. And then we want to work as holistically as we possibly can. Holistic is what we're really all about at GSTC. because the GSTC criteria is defining sustainability with this long definition that's inherent in the GSTC criteria is all about holistic. We really don't work with anybody that will not embrace the full GSTC criteria in a holistic manner. I mean, we might work with a partner on a particular thing on plastics or whatever, but only if they're embracing the concept that they need to be working on everything. And I think this is a great contribution we've made as well, is just to constantly remind people. And honestly, at the moment, we're rather frustrated that because humanity faces two existential crises that we need to get at yesterday, the climate change and the plastics we're putting inside of our bodies every day. These are both existential crises. I don't think plastics gets its due. We now put a credit card worth of plastic inside of our body each week. Who knows what the ramifications of that'll be on our health now and in the future. So we've got existential crisis on environment. But the social issues are also vital. Fairness in job skills training, access to good jobs, indigenous rights, all of that is inside the criteria. And so I started by saying, if there's one thing I want you to think about as GSTC, it's the criteria before all of our programs. And when you think of the GSTC criteria, please think it's holistic, it's all of it, and we have to get at all the issues. So complexity of all these subsectors, complexity of travel and tourism, complexity of sustainability. And so we believe that global standards are a tool in an ecosystem of all the things we need to solve all the problems and all the challenges inherent in being sustainable. So we think that's our role in the ecosystem. And so, as I said when we started, we had the criteria for hotels and tour operators, so we feel qualified on that. We created the destination criteria. If you look at aviation and cruise, a little known fact is that aviation and shipping were left out of the Paris Climate Accords. Aviation and shipping are not even in the Paris Climate Accords. So when you hear any criticism of a country or somebody not following the Paris Climate Accords, that's bad enough on the surface of it, but it's really not even all that inclusive in terms of sectors. I'm not talking about tourism only, just generally. So they have a couple of UN, quasi-UN agencies that give them guidance, but they're not true standards. So our board looked at the rest of the subsectors on the list, and we did a lot of soul searching for a lot of years, long discussions at our board meetings for several years to think about where we would go next as we matured and grew since 2007. And that's where we, after much thought, we decided to create the GSTC MICE criteria to fill a void. There's good standards for MICE here and there, different parts of the world, but we feel that our value add is a universal set because of, as I described, the inclusive process based on the UN SDGs. And also now for attractions. It's another foundational building block. So we just released the GSTC MICE criteria quite recently. We haven't built the tools around it for accreditation of good certification. That'll all come later. The first step was to create the standard. And now we're in the process of creating GSTC attractions criteria. And again, there's workshops here that you can attend and give contribution personally to that development. And then I would say F&B is probably the last one that needs attention. So a lot of pieces to it, and that's kind of our role of where we fit in. Going beyond our activities takes us a little bit more up the timeline. The second bar, 2014, we merged with another UN program. UNEP had started in the year 2000 with a number of tour operators, mostly European, and they worked for several years and on a program called the Tour Operator Initiative. And in 2014, we merged that into our work. So we already had pretty good expertise on tour operator issues, but that really bolstered what we had. And we own the intellectual property from all that work that UNEP and all these tour operators had done. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. And then other dates there are some revisions of criteria, but in 2016, when we revised the hotel and tour operator criteria, we called them the GSTC industry criteria. And because we said that that set of criteria would be good guidance for any type of business in travel and tourism, but the performance indicators and the associated tools would give specificity for tour operators separately from hotels. Also, then around that time frame in 2016, we launched an accreditation program. And this is where we become known for certification. And a couple things you need to know about that. There's a lot of confusion in this space. The words accreditation and certification are not synonyms. They are not synonyms. In colloquial English, we hear all the time, people call certification accreditation. And it's not that. Every other sector knows that. The European Union knows that. Brussels in 2008, the European Commission Regulation 765 in 2008 says that every member state of the European Union can only have a single accreditation body for all sectors. An accreditation body is an entity that puts a mark on the certification bodies. It's actually hard-coded in the European Union. But yet colloquially, we don't know that in travel and tourism. We need to change that because if we're going to work systematically, especially in the public sector, and especially if you're inside the European Union, you need to know that. Brussels knows, and Brussels, we're going to have a wonderful presentation later about the EU Green Claims Directive, which if you're not aware of it, you should be. And that's a matter of not just being inside the European Union, because the EU, pending the legislation that's coming on the EU Green Claims Directive will affect any business of certain size operating inside the EU. And that's a lot of businesses. You could be based in the United States or Asia or elsewhere in the world, and you do business inside the EU, you need to pay attention to it in your supply chain. So that's all, really critical things. So accreditation is a mark on certification. They're not synonyms. To you policymakers, you really should understand the distinction. So we spent years developing an accreditation manual to give guidance for good certification based on ISO standards and other international norms on what certification means. So I'll stop there. It's a very complex issue, but it's important that you understand that piece of us. A lot of discussion occurs about us because of that, because it's all a complex issue. And it's a necessary issue because there's just a lot of confusion in the marketplace about these kinds of marks and labels. But again, I would hope that we become always known, most of all, about the criteria, because from the criteria we have training programs and awareness and so forth. But this is an important part of our work since 2016, and that's growing in relevance. I already talked about the ICE seal. We became a member in 2021. We've been virtual since 2012. When in 2007, UN Foundation created us, they had an office for us in Washington, D.C. for 5 years. And then in 2012, when that funding ended, we decided to go virtual, initially out of poverty. And then we decided we liked it because we like positioning ourselves as a global institution. So we have staff literally all over the world. We have people working from home. We got a few clusters here and there. But we have tremendous language skills. We've got a lot of time zone coverage. So we're truly a global organization in terms of our staff, our membership, all of our activities. But we did create a very small Asia-Pacific office in Korea, where I'm personally living, and we have some of our staff in East Asia where 60% of humanity are Asian, so that works. Then I mentioned the MICE criteria just released and the attractions criteria coming. So to continue this theme of accreditation and the technical aspects, I want to spend a few minutes thinking about the context and where that fits. And I would say this about making tourism more sustainable. We need all sorts of skill sets. We need storytellers. We need teachers, trainers. We need case studies to inspire and motivate and teach. We need a lot of things. We feel that our role at GSTC for a systematic approach in the ecosystem of all the things one needs to do, that where we can provide value, are on two of the three things on this chart. And that is, what are the attributes we're going to work on? The pieces of sustainability, and then an assurance program. So the attributes, I mean the components, plastics, fair labor practices, fair trade practices, the specific things we want to work on. And it's important to kind of think about this as as a thing because there's 41 GSTC criteria, and it's big and it's complex. And whether you're a business or a destination, any organization, you have to kind of put it into manageable pieces. You have to say, this year we're going to work on X number, and next year we'll work on more. And so attributes, first of all, what are we going to work on? What are the priorities? What's the low-hanging fruit for improvement? And then we need measurement, and we need what we like to call assurance, which includes any type of external review, any kinds of marks, verification is another word we like to use. And we like to emphasize the point that we think the term certification is entirely overused and used too loosely in travel and tourism and hospitality. That there's other levels of verification that are not certification. And we need to recognize that, and I'll say more about that, what I mean. Measurement is not something that we do much of directly, and in fact, I would say that in general, in travel and tourism, measurement for sustainability is greatly lacking. Honestly, we're in very bad shape. Very few businesses have ever really measured carbon. Very few destinations have measured carbon. And that's just carbon. We haven't measured much of anything. We're a long ways from that. We're starting to make progress, but it's very recent. We believe we need universal tools that have open access because we need better reporting. A woman at Hilton Hotels, it's one of the largest brands and chains in the world. They have 7,000 properties. She told me several years ago, she said, Randy, we can't go holistic to the GSTC criteria anytime soon. We have a hard time just measuring carbon and reporting on it in our 7,000 hotels. And she said, and then we have to report one way in carbon to the European Union, another way to our shareholders, another way to the UK. She said, I think we have to report on carbon 9 different ways. And our sustainability team is just working on that, she'd said to me 5 or 6 years ago. So we need more universal tools. And it needs to be accessible to mom and pop little inns and big guys. And we don't have any of it. The leaders there in this space are 2 organizations, the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance based in London. Its membership are the biggest chains in the Western world, Accor, IHG, Hilton Hotel, Marriott, and others. They're working on carbon measurement tool and a water measurement tool. And I would encourage the hospitality industry to get on board and use those. And then the second institution that's good at this is the Cornell Hotel School of Business, their CHSB, their benchmarking. That's pretty much it in terms of any universality of tools. So these are things we don't do. My point is, the world needs this, and we need to start working as a community to say, what are the universal tools we'll agree to that are open source, that everybody can have access to, because we've got to get better at measuring and reporting for improvement. And if we can't even get the carbon right, how do we go through the whole litany of all the elements of sustainability in a broad way? Which brings me back to the EU Green Claims Directive. If you're a business inside the European Union, in any sector, Brussels is coming down hard on any claim you make in the marketplace about being green or sustainable. And they mean it. And we'll talk more about it during the course of this conference. And so I think that's wonderful in a way. In many ways, it's great. However, a challenge there is that we perceive that holistic sustainability has taken a step backward in recent months. Well, everybody's panicking about how will I comply with the EU Green Claims Directive. I better get good at counting carbon, which is great and overdue, but yet that's consuming a lot of energy. So that's a consideration we want to get beyond. So our strength is the attributes of the GSTC criteria. As a universal tool, it's open source. The GSTC criteria are available free of charge in the public domain. We do not charge for a standard the way you would buy an ISO standard. It's our gift to the world. All of our technical work is done in English, but we've translated the criteria into many languages for awareness and training. So frontline people all over the world can read it in their own language for the sake of training. So that's been a big effort. So that's all available. So we think we're strong on attributes through this hard work that we put into developing and managing criteria. We're involved in assurance. We've got a piece of that. We're not directly involved in measurement, but we want to be, and we increasingly will be, because we want to identify the proper measurement tools that we can use in all of our systems. In terms of our assurance, also free of charge in the public domain is our accreditation manual, which is really designed for a certification body that wants to get accredited by us. And it's not light reading, but yet you may find it interesting to just skim through it to get a sense of what it's about, and it gives guidance on good certification. So that's on our website. And then I mentioned when we merged the Tour Operators Initiative, that's on our website as well. And this is very interesting, talking about sustainable supply chain development for tour operators. Because we believe that a tour operator, to be sustainable, it's not about what they're doing in their home office, how well they recycle in the office. If there's any tour operator is contracting with hundreds, maybe thousands of hotels, lots of land transport providers all over the world. And so our program provides guidance to them to say your supply chain needs to be sustainable, and how you contract with all those suppliers around the world is absolutely essential to your product being sustainable. So that's a very complex piece, and we do a lot of work and give guidance on that, and our foundational work comes from that work starting in 2000 from UNEP. So I've emphasized this is complex, it's hard, a lot of pieces to it. So I think we were a little guilty for many years of our history to just talk about, you got to go holistic, everybody, and get to it. Good luck. But we've come to learn that's not very reasonable. And so we're now talking about helping you find a pathway for your organization to take this step by step, because you have to take it stage by stage, step by step to get anywhere. It's just too big and too much and too difficult to just do overnight. So this is a sample way, and I encourage you at the destination level, at business level, any organization, to say, if we're going to be sustainable, it's holistic, it's complex, it's all this stuff. I would encourage you to look along two different lines of pathway of development. Work on more and more attributes over time. Say this year, next, we're going to work on these 9 or 15. Next year, we're going to work a few more. 3 years later, some more. Set some targets where to say it's very realistic that we can get to the whole set at whatever point in time. And then along the way, develop your skills internally for reporting and measurement on them. To measure how well you're doing yourself, to be prepared for whatever the EU asks tomorrow and next year, and who knows what, 5 years from now. The skill of just measuring, as I emphasize, is lacking. The skill of reporting is lacking. That has to be an incremental developmental piece as well for businesses of all sizes to figure out how to report. So we really are excited about this kind of concept, and I think you just build your own. But we have worked with WTTC, the World Travel and Tourism Council. You know, of course, many of you are quite aware of it. It's really the only global trade organization of any type in travel and tourism, very prominent organization. And they released a year and a half ago what they call the WTTC Basics in partnership with Radisson Hotels and Jinjiang Hotels in China to release this Sustainable Hotel Basics. And it's rather basic, but what we like about it is everybody needs a starter kit. Every hotel needs a starter kit to kind of get going. And to keep the mark for WTTC Basics, it's got a 2-year time limit. You can't call yourself being part of WTTC Basics after 2 years. You must improve. You must go beyond the very small set of attributes you're working on. So we agreed formally with WTTC last October, along with Sustainable Hospitality Alliance, that the three of us would kind of promote this concept together. We've been very quiet because now we're waiting for a more defined stage 2. So as we speak, WTTC is developing what they're going to call the WTTC Basics Plus, where it's more attributes and it's a little bit higher level, a little bit deeper verification. And I hope you appreciate that concept. Work on more attributes, more things, and then increasingly higher levels of verification, better reporting, neater and tidy, more measurement, more data, and build that skill set as you go, and give it timelines. So I think an organization of any type, you create these timelines, celebrate victories and landmarks, encourage staff. It's difficult to get to we're going to get to the end of line 3 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it is, but celebrate steps along the way. I think this is far more motivating. It's far more organizing to take this approach. So again, you fill in the blanks for what works for you. However you do it, our suggestion is have a pathway. Other things that we do a lot of training. You know, the last 2 days we had 5 training sessions going on at the same time. Many of the people in this room, this is their 3rd or 4th day of content, and they're still here. So for 2 days we had our mainline sustainable tourism course, which upper left, which teaches the essence of both the destination criteria and the industry criteria, because we believe whether you work in the public sector or the private sector, you should have some appreciation of the other side. And it's great to have people in the room together, interacting and learning. So that's been very successful for us. So the last 2 days we had 3 classrooms of that, 2 in English, 1 in Swedish. And at the same time, we were training auditors. And at the same time, we were training on accessible and inclusive travel and on applied DEI, lower right. We actually offer those as separate classes in the social issues, but we're tremendously blessed with 2 leaders in that space who are with us. Where are you, Martin? Is Martin here? Okay, Martin Hang on accessibility. I should have prepared better. And Ronnie Weiss of Travel Unity. Travel Unity is in New York. Martin is in Australia. Both Ronnie and Martin are true experts, and they helped us really devise all the content, and we brought them here. And we've got, you know, in the corridor here at Circus at break time, you'll see promotional tables and sponsors and supporters. We encourage you to visit those tables. We'll have our own table of training, and we have a lot of trainers around the world, many languages. And Ronnie and Martin will be there throughout the course of the day to chat with you. So we can offer these as private sessions. We can customize things a lot of different ways. And look at that. We do it in 17 languages currently, and that's growing. And that all comes about by a business or a development agency or a government funding, requesting the development of the class in another language. So this is really growing, and getting it in the native language is very important, because as much as travel and tourism and hospitality, you know, most frontline people are going to be speaking English. When you get into really good training, come on, you know, you want to get it in your native language. So we take all that seriously. So we translate the criteria in many languages. We're offering training in many languages. We're really trying to really do outreach, you know, and really directly get at people. So let's talk about this conference. We always have a track on destination management, because there's always about 1/3 or more of you from the public sector. So as you go through the breakouts, there's always a track on public policy and destination management. And so we worked with our friends at Visit Sweden and agreed on these other general themes for this conference, that as we look at social issues, we wanted to think about it as welcoming and inclusive, governance issues, thriving and innovative, and credible assurance. So these are kind of general themes of the topics that we'll have in sessions throughout the rest of today and tomorrow. And that we know is some difficult decisions. We always get that as a complaint. I want to be in 3 of those rooms at the same time. Sorry about that, but we record a great deal of it, and you've signed up for that. So that's this afternoon and tomorrow. I wanted to make this comment that really, you're really an impressive group of people. We know many of you, and we've gotten a sense of the rest of you. And I think it's fair to say that practically everybody in the audience could be on this stage, or one of the stages, sharing some expertise and some good practice. Here's how we like to design our conferences. We like to make them very practical, very interactive. We keep a small panel of practitioners on a particular topic. And they'll give brief presentations. They've thought about it. We've prepared. Each panel has had discussions in advance, and they're going to keep it short. And they're and we're going to have good Q&A and open discussion because we want it to be completely shared and highly interactive. So that's how we design this. So it's designed for interactive. And please, it's all about sharing potential solutions and failures. Let's be humble and share as we look at challenges and problems. Let's be humble about what things we may have tried and that failed and didn't work, and share that with us. So open communications and sharing. Emphasis on real solutions. So I said all the rest. Time for Q&A, and please visit the sponsored tables. Now, to be part of Q&A and get good discussions going, we're going to use technology. So please open up your phone and get this QR code of Slido. Many of you used Slido before. And pull that up. While you're doing that, a couple of things. I wanted to call out a few names of people who have been friends of GSTC here in Sweden for a very long time. Jeppe Kleckerassen did our Swedish training last couple of days. Dan Jonsson for many years, Neil Rogers. The three of them we know have been talking about GSTC in this country for many, many years. So I want to give a shout out and thanks to them. So Slido. Hope you've got the QR code by now. You should see, when you get to Slido, you should see, select a room. Go back. Okay. QR code. If you're using an iPhone or whatever for your QR code reader, you probably have to zoom in, especially upper levels. Zoom in to capture the image. Is that working? Okay, my time is running short, so if you can't get it now, we'll continue practice later. Let's give it a shot. So select the room Circus. You'll see in the first page there different rooms that you'll be in over the course of today and tomorrow, but we're in Circus right now. Select Circus, and then you should see this poll, and let's give it a shot. Are you aware of EU Green Claims Directive? Please be honest, just quick. Yes, I know it quite well. I'm very aware. Maybe a little bit. Or no, not at all. So let's just get the juices flowing and try that with that. We asked the same question last year. The very same question last year, and our conference attendees at that point said 22% yes, very aware, 41% said yes, a little. So combined 63% were aware, just under 2/3, and just over 1/3 said no, I don't know about it. So we'll tally the results here in a few minutes, so please vote on that to see where we are. We're going to have fun with this and have a Slido giveaway that the most active participant during the conference wins registration to a free training session of GSTC. Most of it's online. Okay, so be active. And if you also are active on social media with the proper hashtags today and tomorrow, we've got a prize for you for that too. You can also win a free registration to a GSTC training class. So there's the hashtags for social media talking about us today and tomorrow. To win, you need to create a profile in Slido and not be anonymous. So you can work on that later at the coffee break, if not now, because time is very short. But there is this screen somewhere on the Slido to enter your name, because you can't win a prize if we don't know who you are. We can't give it to anonymous because there'll be too many of you. I want to thank very much Visit Sweden and, of course, the Swedish Agency for Economic and Regional Growth. Thank you so much for your wonderful talk and your tremendous support of bringing us here. We thank you deeply. And thank you, Visit Sweden, in addition, for the support on carbon footprint measurement. We have these media friends that have joined us. Thank you for engaging and talking about all this. And these are two general sponsors for 2024, TGA of Turkey and Visit Sweden. We're not political. That just happened. There it is. So thank you very much for your general support. Thank you all for being a part of this conference. Enjoy the conference. Talk, ask questions. We've left time in the networking, and you've got the tables to interact there. Thank you, Sweden, for having us, and I wish you a tremendously successful 2 days. Thank you so much.